What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, the weekly review show where I go over the books that I picked up this week at the comic book shop, go over them a little bit, give you an idea what I think, and whether there's something you should go back to the shop for. To start off with, we're going to go with Aquaman number 10. If you've been following along at all, you probably know that I've got a pretty on and off relationship with Aquaman, as well as the whole overall story of this. I feel like it's a really good read for people that are interested in Aquaman, but I'm not really interested in Aquaman. So what got me interested in issue 10? It has to be the variant cover that features Mera, and the idea that this was going to be a very Mera-centric story. Given what's been going on with this whole deluge and things like that, I'm a little bit lost because I don't really have all the details. But what I get in this issue is something that's pretty excellent. You know, I really like the exploration of Mera's character, her history, the visions that are going to bring about the end of the world, and then with the things that were going on in Justice League where they predicted a forever crisis and the fact that Rebirth is going on, you know, there's a whole host of things that could kind of tie into this. And with all those things really happening at once, it's interesting to see where all these things are going to go and what they really pan out to be in the end of things. We also see the return of Mera to the land and Salty the Sea Dog and all this kind of stuff, and it was really a good story. It's one that I'm probably going to follow along with, at least for this arc until it concludes, just to get a little bit more information, kind of keep pace with that. It's not necessarily a book that I'm going to be picking up on the regular, but I'm going to give this one a chance just to see how it goes and where it kind of takes Aquaman so that way I can be up to date. The next book that I really want to talk about is Death of X number 3. So Death of X is the story of the death of Cyclops, or at least the events leading up to the death of Cyclops. And in this, we still get more Cyclops really nowhere to be seen. A lot of artificial conflict between the Inhumans and the X-Men, or the mutant kind in general, and this is really facilitated by Emma Frost. And we finally see at the end, the last few pages, Cyclops is getting ready, and they've got Alchemy, a former mutant that wasn't really much of a hero. He's been folded into things, and it's just, there's a whole hell of a lot of mess going on in this book, and it's hard to really kind of discern a direction for where things are going. I'm not really sure what to think about it. I do really like the cover, though. Mike Choi does a really good job with these connecting variants, so that's kind of cool, but your mileage is definitely varying on this one, and a lot of people, I'm sure, have already dropped this. But I'm going to stick with it just to see what it sets up for IVX. While I'm sticking with that book just to see how it ties into things, I am really excited about Green Lanterns. So in Green Lanterns number 10, we see the continuation of the Phantom Ring arc, which is written by, of course, Sam Humphries. And this was a really strong opening in issue 9. We get the introduction of who is going to be our antagonist, or at least the tool of our main villain, who's going to be Volthoom, the First Lantern. So in this, we see the whole situation where the Power Ring itself it was on Simon Baz's hand, and he's like going through all the different emotions and things like that. He just doesn't understand. And we see how covetous these other Green Lanterns can be, how Simon feels like his willpower isn't quite enough, how Jessica feels like maybe she's wearing the wrong color, and that possibly this Phantom Ring is the one for her. But that's all too late, because we see the person kind of light somebody's house on fire to cause a distraction. Ultimately, he gets the ring and then takes off as his embodiment of what he really wanted. Was originally a Green Lantern, and then he, realized he could feel fear, and now he's a Yellow Lantern, and I can't wait to see him go through all these spectrums. But we see that Volthoom is still loosely pulling the strings on this, but it's definitely a really good pickup. If you haven't read 9, go grab 9 from your comic book shop and pick up 10 and get caught up, because it's definitely one of the better Green Lantern stories I've kind of dug into in recent memory. And while Green Lanterns is just hitting its stride, we're going to have to talk about Nightwing. So in Nightwing number 8, we see the conclusion of the Rise of the Raptor storyline. We get more backstory on the Raptor character, we get an understanding of how the relationship between Dick Grayson's mom and the Raptor has really happened over these years, what he feels his connection to Dick Grayson's mom is, and how that creates a responsibility for him to oversee the ward of Batman. It's really a good story. I mean, it doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot to help develop Raptor. It gives him some context. It gives him a little bit more substance in there. It doesn't really do anything with Batman. Batman's really just a simple plot device. He's nothing more than a ticking time bomb in this book. But what it does is it gives Nightwing a sense of validation at the end of it. There's a moment in the little word bubble where Batman's just like, I didn't fall. I jumped because I knew you'd catch me. And that's a sense of confidence that Bruce Wayne, Batman has in Nightwing. And that's just really a great touching spin on it, to see how Dick Grayson has matured into this very serious superhero, And if we look at Justice League, 51, 52, the story of Dick Grayson at that point in time. It's just like, you're not meant to be a part of it. You're meant to lead the Justice League. So this is the development of that character, and I really like that. Nightwing's a very strong book. It's a highly recommended one for me. After Nightwing, we have another number 8 issue, and that is Moon Knight number 8. So Moon Knight is an interesting book because it deals with a character that has multiple personality disorder. And the way that they've been treating it is that every personality has a different artist. It's tied up with a different name and things like that. And over the last few issues, we've just been getting this jumble of individual characters, individual story arcs that are trying to tie into this main storyline. And I really like what Jeff Lemire is doing here, because over the course of this book, we see that every single character is understanding that they are not, they're not what they're supposed to be. They're not acting the way that they should. The things around him, each character aren't quite what they should be. And then ultimately, it just finally culminates with everybody that's still stuck inside of Mark Spector's head coming together to have this moment of realization. And that just leads me into the next issue, where they're going to kind of be a little bit more cohesive. They're going to kind of bond everything together, and then we finally get this showdown between all the Marks and Khonshu and New Egypt, and it's going to be really good. If you like this kind of, multiple personality, divergent, convergent storylines, Jeff Lemire is definitely doing a great job writing it, so I can't recommend picking up Moon Knight enough, especially when we're going back to more Greg Smallwood art, which is just awesome. I really love the textures that he's got in there, and it's great. That last page when everything kind of came back together, definitely awesome. Really recommend that one. But one of those books I was loving a long time ago might not necessarily be so favorable right now, and that's Green Arrow number 10. So this is where we take on our whole Mystery on the Orient Express kind of thing, and it's good. There's a couple cool throwbacks. You've got the boxing glove arrow, which kind of makes an appearance. You've got, everything that goes along with this kind of witty, cracking joke kind of banter that's happening before they get on the train. And then, of course, Dinah Lance, her black canary dress is pretty stunning. But overall, I just feel like they need to get a little bit more urban. They got to get back to the city. They got to take care of everything. They've got to deal with who Ollie is as a person now, after the events of this whole kind of inferno, burning everything down and losing all his money and destroying these criminal organizations, all that kind of stuff. Like, I want to dig into the meat and potatoes of that. Not necessarily this distracting, I'm on a train storyline, which is kind of tangential. It's not necessarily part of that main core story. So I still recommend Green Arrow, but it's not quite as strong as it once was. But then you've got another book that's basically as strong as ever, and that is Superman number 10. And this is the greatest comic book I have read in a long time. And I'm going to say, whatever, call me out on that, I don't really care, but I want to hear what you guys think about this book in the comments, because this was so much fun. The first you've got, John and his little blonde girl friend, girlfriend, we'll figure that out later, he's a kid. So they're like talking about their science homework, and there's this kind of bully that he's just, turn the other cheek kind of situation, and all this kind of stuff. And then they venture past this spooky old house, and he goes into the swamp and all this kind of stuff. And we see the resurgence of Nobody. So she makes a return with Goliath. And ultimately, we see Damian being a little D-bag, and he basically kidnaps Superboy to kind of keep him in restraints because he's a terror. And the worst thing, there's just such cool little fight scenes between Damian and John. And then when Superman arrives, all bets are off, man. Batman's just like, release him before, and then smash! And you just see rage and like, oh my God, I'm a father, and where do you have my child, and what are you doing, Bruce? And you gotta teach your kids some... Oh my God, it was just so much fun. There was like moments where you're just like, oh shit, it's about to hit the fan. And then there was laugh out loud moments too. There's this one great little frame. I gotta talk about this in a review. So I'm gonna do a full review on this one, and this one's gonna be... It's epic. It is amazing. Superman is... Yeah, I'll say it. Superman has consistently been the best book out of DC Rebirth. I can't think of an issue that was bad. Maybe that's a little bit of euphoria, that's a little bit of love for the Superman number 10, but that was such a fun book. I loved it to pieces. I can't recommend it enough, and it's a great jumping on point for somebody that just wants to get in on a really fun book and get to know Superman, Superboy, and it sets up Super Sons, which is coming out in February. So definitely a must grab for anybody that reads comic books, really. And then there's another book that I was really enamored with, and that was a surprise because it's Champions number 2. So Champions number 2, written by Mark Waid, this is a book where, number 1 was really fun. I thought that it was a great take on this new Avengers kind of team, and how all these different characters were wanting to be socially responsible while also doing this kind of adventuring and saving the day. And what we see is that Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, has decided that a camping trip a team building exercise is needed in order for people to be a little bit better friends, a little bit more in tune with who they are. And I thought that was a really funny setup for how everything was gonna go. And then you've got these different things like, okay, tell me who you are, what you can do, and those kind of things. And then you've got Spider-Man gives the powers, Miss Marvel gives the powers, Nova, Sam Alexander, he shows off his powers, and then you've got Viv. And then Viv is just like, oh yeah, I've got an internal server, and just like, wait a minute, backup servers? And everybody realizes that she has built-in Wi-Fi, and her Wi-Fi password is super funny. I thought that was really, really funny. And then there's this moment between Viv and Sam that got a little hot and heavy, and that was really interesting, especially when you see the last page. And I mean, I can't do that. I can't do that for you guys. I'll spoil the crap out of it in the review, but man, this is a really funny book too. It was funny, it was entertaining, and this is definitely going to be the flagship book out of Marvel. Just the way that they're writing these characters and the way that it corresponds with Humberto Ramos's art is just a stunner. I can't recommend Champions enough, especially if you want to be entertained in a comic book. You don't want to just be serious all the time. This is entertaining. It's the definition of it. I loved it. It was great. And then you've got another book that was great. I mean, I'm just running them off here, and that's Batman number 10. So while I really liked Batman number 9, it was a really good take. It was a really good start to the I Am Suicide arc. This continuation is really interesting because you get this situation where Batman is about to storm Santa Prisca on its own. He's about to get shot down by the Air Force. He's fighting hundreds of guys on his own, and then all of a sudden Bane gets involved, and he's still naked in a room full of skulls, which is super creepy, ridiculously creepy, especially when he climbs on the back of Batman, and you're just like, oh my god, what's he gonna do? And you get that kind of familiar crack, 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 crack. But there are a couple discerning and unsettling things. Batman keeps repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again. The same phrases, the same situations, all throughout, he just keeps repeating the same thing. He never really says anything different, which makes me think that this is not necessarily Batman. This is some sort of dummy, it's some sort of robot, it's something that he's put in his place so that way it can take the brunt of this in order to get inside Santa Prisca and let everybody else in. That's what it feels like, because there's no way that this would be Batman recovering from what happened in such short order, unless there was just absolute goddamn grit and determination in this man, which of course there is. He's Batman, but it's definitely a book where you're like, is this Batman? Because if this is Batman, oh my god, why did he just do that? Oh, and you cringe, you hurt with Batman. So definitely a really good part 2. Go grab part 1 in Batman number 9, grab Batman number 10. I'm going to be doing a review of this one too, so definitely check that out as well. This is another really good book from Tom King and Mikhail Janin. Now that we're done with the regular books, we're going to hop over to the number 1s, and in the first number 1, we're going to talk about Occupy Avengers, written by David Walker. So Occupy Avengers makes me feel bad about not doing anything about social issues, and I don't necessarily know if that's the point. This one deals with Clint Barton out investigating a contaminated water source at an Indian reservation. So if you want to get your healthy dose of social and community abuse, if you want to feel like you're not doing anything to change life to make other people's lives better, this is a really good book to do that. It's got me kind of torn, because it makes me feel a little bit bad, but overall it doesn't really feel like it's a bad book. It's nice to see Clint get a little bit of character development. It deserves an issue 2. It deserves at least a look at issue 2 in order to feel it out a little bit more. And then there's this new number 1 from Image, and that is Mayday number 1. So Mayday deals with a bunch of Russian spies set in 1971. One of their compadres, their compatriots, their comrades, decides to turn traitor and ultimately gets rubbed out. So with this being the situation, you see what happens when these 2 Soviet spies that are undercover in the U.S. that have just assassinated one of their own, what happens when they've got to get back to San Francisco and they meet up with a bunch of naked hippies that are on drugs in the desert? You can only assume what happens from there. Several positions, a lot of psychedelics, some gratuitous nudity, not really much violence, but overall it's a strong adult book. It's a very unique experience, especially when he's tripping his face off and the woman's like, yeah, whew, yeah, there's a lot going on in that one. So, can't recommend, But check it out, I guess. We'll leave that up in the air. You guys make your own decisions on that. Once we get done talking about Mayday, we'll head back to Marvel and Avengers number 1. So Avengers number 1 is also written by Mark Waid. And this is kind of cool because like the story art, the Mike Del Mundo's art is pretty rad. You know, it's very cool. It's stylized in certain aspects, and it's a very unique look at the Avengers. The thing is that when Mark Waid is writing this, there's a lot of stuff that just feels a little convoluted. His portrayal of Peter Parker, you know, aka Spider-Man, this quippy, witty, funny kind of guy. Yeah, sure, that's cool, but he writes Peter as being desperate. It's like there's a meeting at Parker Industries, and then they're at the top floor, and they're like, oh yeah, just use all this stuff, you know, ready to be part of the Avengers, you know, Spider-Man really wants to join up with you guys, and it's just like, dude, are you like 14 and fanboying over people? I just found that portrayal of Peter Parker to be a little frustrating overall, because at this point in time, you know, he's been Spider-Man for a good period of time. He is a very accomplished superhero. There's no real reason for him to be that way about the Avengers. So it's a little, whatever. The whole portrayal of Kang and this Kang War idea, that's pretty rad. So I'm on board for the storyline, but the characterizations are something I'm going to have to get past. So I'm definitely going to give this at least the first arc. If you have a mild interest in the Avengers, definitely go grab it to see if it's for you. And then we get to the biggest and baddest number 1 of all, and that is Unworthy Thor. So the return of the Odinson. And what we see with this is not necessarily what some people were expecting, was a little bit more continuation of his storyline. What we do is we flash forward a little bit to the modern day, you know, in current day, where he is fighting through this horde of whatever the hell they are, trying to reach this hammer. And then we immediately flash back to 3 months before, while he's still on the moon, and he's like fighting off these trolls and all this kind of stuff. Now he can only get around the galaxy by goat power, which is ridiculous and cool, you know, because the goat is a badass. You know, he's Toothgnasher. Toothgnasher the Goat is a badass goat. And we see this replacement for the Watcher, who is like called the Unseen, and he sees everything, but he's not seen by other people unless they want him to. Yeah, a whole Watcher kind of conversation happens, and they direct him to old Asgard, where he meets one of his buddies, who offers him up the power that he needs to succeed. So I don't want to spoil it too much in this one, because I'm going to do a review of this one too, but overall, I really think this is a good start for the Unworthy Thor. I like to see the return of the Odinson to the Marvel Universe. And the cool thing is that a lot of people are peppering in different things about Secret Wars. So instead of completely ignoring the events and trying to make things all new and all different, they're going to treat it like it was, which is just kind of like a speed bump in the Marvel Universe, albeit a very big speed bump. So you see things that happened in that universe kind of coming forward. So we're probably going to see the fracturing, or what's happening regarding what maybe Franklin Richards and Reed Richards and the entire Fantastic Four, who are still out there building this new multiverse. You're going to see that in that respect. You're going to see that in Ultimates, which is going to come out in a few weeks. And then it's fair game, man. You know, you've got Renew Your Vows coming back, which is taking place in a parallel universe. Spider-Gwen was already taking place in a parallel universe. This Thor is insinuated that there's another Mjolnir-style hammer that has been cast out from Secret Wars, particularly the Thor's storyline. So I'm probably going to do a video on that, because that's really something that you got to tie into this particular book. So, I mean, I feel like all bets are off to try and make this stuff work. And I think that since Secret Wars was really good, especially compared to, say, like Civil War II right now, definitely a good place to jump on. And as far as fans of Thor, this is the book for you. So those are all the books that I picked up this week and what I thought about them, but I want to know what you guys thought too, so hit me up in the comments down below. We can start that discussion and talk about things that I might not have grabbed, so definitely do that. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe right there to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.